Hello and welcome to UAT Time within the United Countries Special by First Ukraine. You can find us on the frequencies available on our website, firstuat.com. I'm Sergey Velichanskiy.
And I am Olivier. UAT Time is dedicated to bring Ukraine and Europe closer to each other by introducing the real Ukraine to the rest of the world.
As you know, we have joined the world campaign, Let My People Go. 25 Ukrainian citizens have been illegally detained and kept on the Russian territory at this time. 25 is the number of people that we know of. Could there be more? You can never be sure when dealing with Russian-backed terrorists. You can find more information under the hashtags FreeSavchenko and Let My People Go. Today, we want to dedicate quality time to discuss Ukraine and EU relationships, the myths and the truth.
Our guest today is Joselyn Guitton, the first secretary at the delegation of the EU in Ukraine.
And this is our part 2 program, because in part 1 we started discussing the issues about the Ukraine and EU association, and we developed that more. And so the next question, and actually the next question has to do with specific Ukrainians, the citizens, because the governments, we kind of understand why the governments get some benefits from a lot of deals, international deals with between the countries, but what are the benefits for Ukrainian citizens resulting from the agreement? And to add this is a little quote from one of the articles on the internet. It is just 60 kilometers from Kharkiv to the Russian border and nearly 1,000 kilometers to the nearest EU border. The geopolitical preference of local citizens are undoubtedly influenced by this reality, just as the foreign trade preferences of local businesses are. Despite these geographic facts, Ukraine's current situation demands that these preferences change. What do you have to say about this?
Well, just maybe to start with this quote, just to elaborate a bit on what I said in the first part, I think that once, I really want to repeat that it's not because you trade more with the EU, because trade is becoming easier with the EU because of the association agreement, that you have to give up trade connections, trade links with Russia. So it's not because you live in Kharkiv, you work in Kharkiv, you have a company in Kharkiv or in Dnipropetrovsk or in Zaporizhzhia, which used to have close economic relationship with Russia, that this should stop. Clearly, when you look at the EU example, it's a very diverse continent. We have countries dealing with specific part of the world. You have Spain, Portugal, who have special connections with Central and South America, and they are dealing more with those countries. Germany has special connections with Eastern Europe, and Germany is dealing more with those countries. And this works very well. It's not because you have, once again, close economic links with a specific part of the world, in the present case Russia, that you should give this up. Even though, as I've mentioned already before, indeed, trade links have decreased, but for mostly political reasons. But coming back to the core of your question, well, I think you can see it both ways. You can see it from a purely trade point of view, from the fact that this association agreement is creating a duty-free trade between the EU and Ukraine, meaning that now, when someone wants to export to the EU, from Ukraine wants to export to the EU, they can export duty-free. And when European companies want to sell on the Ukraine market, they can also sell duty-free. Not completely, but it will become the case progressively. All economic model and economic theory and empirical evidence demonstrate this is good for companies, this is good for consumers. And some assessments have been made and demonstrate that this will bring more purchasing power to Ukrainian citizens and will make Ukrainian companies more competitive, a little bit. And that, to be frank, this will bring benefits, this will bring some economic benefits, but to a certain extent. Some economic studies value this to roughly plus 10% of GDP spread over a number of years. But these are already quite old studies which were done during the negotiations, which are still interesting, but things have changed so much that it's quite difficult to rely completely on that. So, but in any case, your question, then you could say, you could have another question and say, okay, 10% of GDP, this is not even half of what Ukraine has lost over the last 2 years. So is this worth it? Is this worth fighting for this, having Maidan because of that, having a conflict, having a war in the east of the country just for those rather relatively small trade benefits? Then I would tell you that the association agreement with the EU is not only about tariff, not only about tariff duties, not only about taxes you pay at the border when you want to export or import from or to the EU. It's also about reforming the economy. The core of the association agreement is about having Ukraine adopting lots of European standards, technical standards, sanitary rules, but also rules linked to competition, public procurement, intellectual property, financial rules, all what makes Ukraine, the EU, a functioning market economy.
Sure.
And it's very difficult to assess what this will bring to the Ukrainian citizen in the end of the process. But maybe it's better to make comparison. And a comparison we love in the EU is to compare Ukraine with a country like Poland. Simply because 25 years ago, these two countries had almost exactly the same GDP per capita.
Yeah.
Actually, Ukraine had also almost exactly the same GDP per capita as Romania. Today, and actually no, 2 years ago, so even before the depreciation, even before the currency collapsed in Ukraine, Poland had the GDP per capita 3 times higher than Ukraine. And now it doesn't mean much because you have so much currency fluctuation. But it may be 5 or 6 times. But of course, the hryvnia varies a lot on a daily basis. But still, it's enormous. And why? Is it because of EU membership? To a certain extent, possibly. But membership only came 15 years later. It was 2004. And when you observe Poland, or it could be the same for Czech Republic, for Romania, for Slovakia. When you observe the results, growth in Poland had started much earlier than EU membership. Even in the beginning of the 90s, actually, when Poland and Czech Republic and Slovakia and so on signed association agreement with the EU, which are quite similar agreements to the one we are talking about today. So, of course, you can stick to the tariff part of the agreement, which is and then you can try to predict with some economic models what are the benefits. And there are some benefits, but not huge. What we expect very much is that by transforming the economy, this association agreement could give much higher benefit because it would create in Ukraine a fully functioning market economy where the state intervenes very little in the economy, does not interfere. When a company has a problem, this company should not rely on its political connection, but should rely on courts, should rely on judges, should rely on a functioning administration, on less corruption and so on and so on.
Sure.
But of course, it's much more difficult to quantify.
Because there are a lot of skeptics or realists or skeptics, whatever, we can call them the way we want, but they say that Europe does not need extra competitors to come in and to sell on their territory. Definitely Europe is there. I'm sure there are some policies that protect their own manufacturing and all the farming companies and food producers and distributors and all that. And in addition, they say that the only thing or one of the things that Europe needs from Ukraine is resources, the soil and the resources that are 45 million people that could be, the labor for that. I definitely want you to respond to that.
Well, plenty of things to say. But actually, I would note that these two arguments are a bit self-contradicting. Because on the one hand, people are afraid that the EU does not need Ukraine. And on the other hand, people are afraid that the EU wants to use Ukraine to some extent. So there is some contradiction. But starting with the first point. Well, first of all, the EU is quite an open market. It's quite funny because when you work inside the EU, people are quite critical of Brussels institutions, claiming that they are too open and they are a bit naive because they are very much wanting to make trade easier with the rest of the world. And that's precisely why right now the EU is negotiating trade agreements with plenty of countries all over the world. A big one with the US, one with Japan, recently one with Canada, and I could give you many other countries. So the EU is a very open economy, and we benefit very much from that because we have a trade surplus, and we trade a lot with the rest of the world.
Sure.
And most countries in the EU believe that it brings progress, more competition, and so on. there is one big exception, and you're absolutely right when you quoted farming, the farming sector, the agricultural sector. For plenty of historical, cultural reasons, it's a sector which is indeed rather close in the EU. Because after the war, a big project of the EU was to make the EU self-independent from a farming point of view. And that's why we created a common agricultural policy, which is still into force today, which is subsidizing, to a certain extent, European farmers. And I would say that for all other sectors, the EU is very much open. On the farming sector, it's a quite different story.
Sure.
But still on that, the association agreement is opening the EU market to Ukrainian farmers. Very often, we hear a misconception saying that there are quotas which prohibit Ukrainian farmers to export as much as they would like to the EU. Actually, there are no quotas. There are what we call tariff rate quotas, which simply says that now, thanks to the agreement, up to a certain quantity, Ukrainian farmers can sell on the EU market duty-free. And above this quantity, if they want to export to the European market, they have to pay tariff.
Okay.
But there is no limit in exports to the European
because
market.
I read about
without taxes.
Up to a certain quantity,
Without
duty-free,
Oh.
and above with duties. And just to give you a very concrete example, for instance, in honey, Ukraine in 2015 exported 5 times what we call the TRQ in our jargon, which is the tariff rate quota. So if you export 5 times more than your quota, it means, of course, that it's not an absolute quota. It's not a limitation.
And for wood, for other products, this is the same?
Well, for wood, it's a slightly different topic because, as you may know, Ukraine has adopted a wood export ban. So Ukraine is self-inflicting a prohibition to export to the rest of the world. Actually, that's illegal based on WTO, on World Trade Organization rules, and also it's not compatible with the association agreement. So actually, it's a problem for us. But that's a bit another topic.
In other agricultural products, that's the same.
Absolutely.
For example, the
chicken, meat.
Meat.
It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. But for chicken, that's typically the case. For red meat, for instance, it's a bit different. Ukraine cannot export today because Ukraine does not comply with a number of rules linked to the European market.
That's what we talked in the first program.
Absolutely.
Anything that has to do with sanitarian issues,
yes, exactly.
and food and all that.
But that's quite a different issue.
Sure. But why is it a problem that Ukraine does not export wood? Like it's one thing is like, for instance, it's our business. If we don't want to, have other countries come and take our wood.
Actually, it's not only your business because Ukraine is a member state of the WTO, of the World Trade Organization.
Okay.
And based on the rules of this organization, Ukraine has committed not to adopt such restriction.
Okay.
So it's an international commitment of Ukraine not to do so. So that's as such as a problem. Second, that's a very simple reason. You have companies in Ukraine which have an interest in being able to source, to get wood at a cheap price. For paper companies, furniture companies, and for those companies, having a ban on wood export makes that, of course, the price of wood decrease in Ukraine because you have less customers.
Yeah.
So it keeps the wood for themselves in a way.
Okay.
All right. Before you ask the question, I want to remind that we are on Facebook, facebook.com/first UA channel, and facebook.com/UAT time. Find us and let us know what you think. Just let us know that you are with us. Send a smile or whatever. All right. Hey, let's go.
I think we have also to underline for those, Euroscepticism, that the EU is the first economy in the world. And that's because of our rules. And because those rules make us more competitive, I think. And that's a key point. Then I have another question. While entry into force of the trade-related part of the agreement lead to a flood of EU goods entering Ukraine, threatening Ukrainian producers?
Well, we have actually touched upon this topic already a little bit. It's true that simply when you decrease tariff, it makes it easier for European companies to sell on the Ukrainian market, which is good for Ukrainian consumers because they can buy cheaper European goods, which of course is a bit more competition for Ukrainian companies. On the other end, of course, it means also that it's both ways. It means that you have also Ukrainian companies which now have access to the largest market in the world. But that's economic theory, which is also validated in practice. But once again, let's be frank, how many products compete face-to-face in Ukraine how many European products and Ukrainian products compete directly, belong to the same market? Very few. And you could use this same argument with any country which has opened to the rest of the world. When you look at countries in Southeast Asia, which I've mentioned briefly during the first part, those countries are among the most open in the world. And they have benefited a lot from that. When you look at South Korea, when you look at Taiwan, when you look at Singapore, those countries are among the most open in the world. And of course, some companies in those countries may have suffered when this process started. But when you look at the benefits they got overall, for me the picture is pretty clear.
And the result for Singapore in 20 years is amazing.
Of course, absolutely.
Amazing. And you know, when now you go to the supermarket, more and more you can find some EU products, more and more. Now in supermarket in Ukraine. And you are right, those products are very new in the Ukrainian market, very new.
Well, I'm sure, I didn't notice that, like what you're saying. I mean, there are dynamics, like on some specific goods, I saw them like 5 years ago, then they disappeared, then they came back. So I think it's always, there's going to be the dynamics in that. But the question is, that is, you know, exactly one of the things that the skeptics say, that the opening of the market of Ukraine with the Ukrainian goods, like, you know, milk, meat and all that, definitely is going to be an influence for, you know, the milk companies to comply with the standards and compete.
This is a problem of standards. It's a problem of quality. They have to increase their quality.
I like
they have to
our milk.
They have to invest. I don't speak not only about milk, but
no, I'm just being a typical. I don't have the you know, economics degree. I'm just being a typical Ukrainian, and that's what the people say on the street. Okay. The one thing that is compatible, yes, if European, you know, you know, a good milk or whatever is more expensive, then I have a choice. Okay, that's something. This is more affordable. This is not. But when it becomes the same, then it may have a tendency to kill the production.
No, but let's. Standards is not about becoming the same.
Okay.
When you look in the EU, the rules are the sanitary rules.
Yes.
The health rules are the same for everyone, and you have look how many cheeses we have in the EU. From in all countries, you have dozens of different cheeses in all countries.
Okay.
And these products are extremely different. So there is not a single European directive which says cheese, this is it, and that's it, full stop.
The cheese of the EU, the milk of the EU.
So it's simply about rules. It's about sanitary, about health, about the level of dioxin you may have in some products, how the process should be made to ensure that there is no risk. But it's not about diversity, and the EU is all about diversity. I think there are very few continents in the world, or maybe it's a bit excessive to say so. But yes, I could talk a lot about food.
United in diversity. This is
that's indeed the EU motto.
But are there higher standards for Ukrainian companies to sell in the EU? Rather than for the same companies from EU to sell in Ukraine?
Well, that's precisely what the agreement is about.
Okay.
Right now, yes, because right now the agreement has entered into force, but the implementation is progressive.
Okay.
The idea is to say that now, if you want to sell on the European market, you have to comply with EU rules. If you are French or Ukrainian company, full stop. If you want to sell in France, in Germany, in Austria, you have to comply with the rules of the EU, whether you are French or whether you are Ukrainian or Japanese or Russian, whatever. If you want to sell on the Ukraine market, well, it's the same. You have to comply with the rules of the Ukraine market. The thing is that Ukraine will progressively adopt the rules of the EU, which will make trade much easier, first of all, and which will mean that the rules will become the same, so the level of quality, or at least quality not exactly, but of safety, will become the same. But once again, there are the rules which are linked to safety, but this has no impact on the diversity. If you prefer to have wine from Odessa, if you prefer to have cheese from the Carpathian, salo from I don't know which region in Ukraine, no problem with that, not at all, of course.
It's your problem, it's your choice.
Okay, now, I've noticed one of your programs is Team Europe. Because we don't have much time left, would you please just maybe in a nutshell tell us, is there a help to local companies and business? Or
well, actually, to a certain extent, but then I will have another word on our programs to help Ukrainian companies. The logic of this Team Europe program is indeed to spread information, because the EU is a complex organization. We all know, I cannot deny that. It's a big technocracy. Rules are complex. The association agreement is complex, and we've been talking for 45 minutes about it already.
Yeah.
And we are far from having exhausted the topic.
Very far.
So the idea is to build a network of people, sort of a specialist networks, which are people, university professors, journalists, local activists, and to give them more knowledge about the EU so that they can spread this information afterwards. The idea is not about propaganda, it's simply to share information. Because you have lots of information which is publicly available, but it's one thing to spend hours on the website of the EU, it's another to have human contacts, and to spread the knowledge and to have interactions. To have,
so Joselyn, I want to add that in each country of the EU, in each state member of the EU, you have a Team Europe network. I was member of the Team Europe network in France during 7 years, and that's very good because in each state member you have a Team Europe network, and that's very good for Ukraine. This is the same in other countries.
Quite a good Team Europe here in Kharkiv, in Ukraine, in Kiev.
We were in France. We were because I am not now. I finished in 2014. But we were professor, expert, former deputy of the European Parliament, former civil servant of the European Commission, and that's very high level.
We've got one more minute left, but I do want to touch this issue because it's one of the propaganda problems. Will the association agreement force Ukraine to allow same-sex marriages?
I would like to laugh, but unfortunately it's difficult because I know that unfortunately this kind of stupid myth has been spread. I remember when I arrived in Ukraine, you had this Vedrine organization, which was Ukrainian Choice, which was spreading all over Kiev, at least Kiev, billboard, saying that indeed the association agreement would force. It doesn't make any sense. I think you can read the agreement if you wish, and then you will not find a single provision to say so. But I think the best argument to explain why this is rubbish is simply that in the EU you have 28 member states, and you have basically 28 different situations. Some countries indeed allow same-sex marriage. Some other give special partnership. Some other countries have nothing for gay people. So it's a pure member states competence, and there is not a single provision in the association agreement which is referring to this kind of obligation for Ukraine. Yes, once again, you have so many different situations.
This is very funny for
but
us.
we have to, I agree that unfortunately we have to make this very clear. If Ukraine wants to do it, okay, that's Ukraine's sovereign choice. If Ukraine doesn't want to do anything and says that you can only have heterosexual marriage, fair enough, and that's how it is.
Just as a citizen of Ukraine, I want to ask, when will there be free visas for Ukrainians? What hinders?
Well, now the ball is in Ukrainian court. The conditions have been made very clear on the EU side. There are still a few conditions to comply with, but normally, hopefully, the law, I think, has passed on first reading at the Rada, the law regarding to the declaration of assets of the members of parliament, which was one of the last blocking conditions. So as far as I understand, even though it's not my main topic, there are still a few conditions to comply with, but hopefully this will be done soon. Soon. It's once again, conditions have been made clear by the EU. So,
well, thank you very much for stopping by. It's been two good programs, part 1, part 2. Find us on the internet. And anyway, we are looking forward to the progress of Ukraine and Ukrainian business. It was United Country UAT time by First Ukraine. Our guest was Joselyn Guitton, the first secretary of the delegation of the EU in Ukraine.
Olivier Vedrine and Sergey Velichanskiy were working for you in the studio. Stay with us and we'll show to you the real Ukraine.
Thank you for being with us. Have a good day and see you soon.